Welcome to Coach Bennett's podcast, where every run has a purpose, where kindness is hardcore, where this is about running, and this is not about running, where every starting line is a finish line in disguise, where rambling still gets you where you need to be, where pineapple will never ruin your pizza, and the sodas, adult and not adult kind, are always cold, and where there is room on the starting line for everybody. I'm Coach Bennett. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. Let's get started. All right, welcome to episode 94 of Coach Bennett's podcast, and we're going to do something different today. We're going to try not to ramble. I know, it's crazy, but we're going to try not to ramble. That is the goal, and the goal is there for a few reasons. One, I need to cook dinner. So I'm kind of in a jam. My back is up against the wall. I have a limited amount of time, which means I have a limited amount of time to ramble. And then the other thing is just, it's going to be something new, but that's not real. It's really, I just have to get out of here and I got to cook dinner. Now, here's the crazy thing. It's episode 94, which is one of my favorite years ever, 1994. So I may just have to double down in 1995 because 1995 was actually fabulously mediocre for me, but 94 was great. So maybe what I'll do is during 95, I'll talk about 94 to begin with, and then that way it'll satiate my desire to just tell you about 1994, which was a great movie year, and it was a great music year, and it was just an all-around good year. I'm just going to tell you, but we'll get to that during episode 95, but this is not episode 95. This is episode 94. 5 tips for a better long run. That's right, 5 tips for a better long run. And this was tough to come up with because I had like 20 tips. And I was thinking, like, how am I going to narrow this down? Because I don't have that much time and I can't give you all 20 tips. So it was tough. I'll tell you, it was stressful. But I came up with 5. So here we go. Are you ready for my 5 tips? Now, well, let me preface this by saying, these are 5 tips. I'm not saying these are my best 5 tips. I'm not saying these are my only 5 tips. I'm just saying these are 5 tips. So I narrowed it down, and this is what I'm talking about this time, okay? I just, want to preempt somebody writing, being like, those are your best 5 tips? And it's like, yeah, these are 5 of my best. I didn't say they were my 5 best. You said that. But anyway, all right. So let's start with number 1. Know what you're doing and where you're going. Yeah, I know. I was like, what people are going to say, duh. But guess what? Most mistakes are because the duh stuff doesn't actually get taken care of. Like, that's just the reality. I've worked with runners for a really long time, and it's amazing how many people mess up a long run or don't have as good of a long run as they could have had because they didn't know what they were doing and they didn't know where they were going. Let me break down what that means. Know what you're doing. All right. When you take on a long run, the purpose, well, there's a couple purposes. One is, this is your longest run of the week. Okay, that's pretty obvious. That's just a math thing. What's your longest run of the week? Okay. If you extend it out, it's to callous your mind, to callous your body to more minutes, more meters, more miles, to push yourself in terms of endurance. And by endurance, yes, there's the physical side, but yeah, there's the mental side. There's the intensity of running for a long period of time as opposed to the intensity associated with a high effort, which usually equates to a faster speed. There's the difficulty of staying focused over a long period of time. There's the difficulty of maintaining your strength and your power over a long run. There's the difficulty of staying true to the purpose and the spirit of the run. So know what all of those things are ahead of time. It's not just, I'm running longer. And I think a lot of athletes think that's the point. It's not just, let's add another mile or another 2K or another 15 minutes to the run. There are multiple purposes within the run that you're trying to achieve. So what are you doing? And that also means you need to know whether or not you can do what you're trying to do. It makes no sense to set yourself up for failure. There's always going to be the possibility that the run doesn't go well. There's always going to be a possibility that the long run or a speed run or an easy run does not work out. But you're not setting yourself up from a place of ignorance. You're always setting yourself up when it comes to training from a place of wisdom, earned wisdom, whether it's your earned wisdom or the coach's earned wisdom. And what you're trying to do is give yourself the best possible run so you can progress. That's the key. A lot of people think it's just, well, I'm just going to be redlining. No, there are certain situations, yes, where the goal is to redline, to put yourself out towards the absolute furthest extent of your possible effort. Yes, we want you to go there sometimes. In fact, we want you to break through there sometimes. But you need to understand, it's not every time you go for a long run. It's not this game of like Russian roulette where it's like, well, I'm going on another long run and, sometimes I bonk and sometimes I don't. That's not the purpose of a long run. It's to build certain things in an educated way, an intelligent way. So what are you doing? Does this distance or duration make sense? Does the pace associated with what you're doing make sense? Where are you going is the second half. Like for a long run, it becomes really important to know where you're going. And by that, I mean literally, where are you going? What's the course? What's the route? What's the terrain? Is it hilly? Is it completely unshaded, or are you in some shade the entire time? All of these things are very important. Is it road? Is it trail? Is it a mix? Where are you running? All of these things will play a part in not just the quality of the long run, but what the benefits of the long run are. I had a good friend that I ran with when I was running for Nike, and he did all of his long runs leading up to his marathon on trails, which, you could say, well, that makes sense because it's less pounding on your legs when you're doing 15, 18, 20-mile runs. Like, this is great. You're saving yourself so you can keep your volume high. And he extended this out to his easy and his recovery runs. He did most of them on the trails as well. And his training was great. He was fit. The problem was his body wasn't ready to run 42.2K on roads because it hadn't run hardly anything on roads. And the pounding on roads is different than the pounding on trails. So guess what? He fell apart about 15 miles in because his body was not used to that type of pounding. It was used to running high volume. It was used to running a lot of meters, a lot of miles, a lot of minutes on trails. So where are you running? Take that into account. It also works the other way. If you're used to running on roads and maybe you live in an area where the roads are predominantly flat, and then you decide, hey, every once in a while, just to mix things up and diversify your training, which is smart, to take some of the burden and the load off of your body when you're doing high volume things like a long run, you are going to hit the trails maybe every third long run or fourth long run, whatever it may be. You can decide. The point is, for this exercise, we're just going to say every once in a while you hit the trails. And the trails near you are hilly, undulating trails, ups and downs. And well, guess what? If you're used to only running flat on the roads, when you start running very hilly, undulating trails, maybe even technical trails where the footing's not so great, well, it's going to be a very different experience. You need to know that ahead of time. Do your due diligence and understand where you're going and what you're trying to do. Know that before you cross the starting line. That's, I think, a pretty good first tip. My second tip, be fueled and hydrated before the run. I get so many questions from athletes about how to hydrate and how to fuel on a long run. And my first response is usually not the one they're expecting, but I think it's the most important and valid response, which is, well, the best way to stay fueled and hydrated on a run is to be fueled and hydrated before the run, which usually gets a blank stare initially until they realize what I'm saying. If you head into a long run and you are not properly fueled, you're not going to be able to properly fuel on the run. If you show up for a long run and you are not properly hydrated before the run starts, you're not going to be able to hydrate properly on the run. You don't want to use the run as ketchup. And I don't mean Ketchup. I'm talking about ketchup. CATCH space UP. You don't want to catch up on your fueling and your hydrating on a long run. You want to show up to the starting line properly fueled, properly hydrated. So yes, that means if you reach out to me and say, hey, what do you think about fasting before a run? I'm going to say, I think it's stupid. That's me. You can disagree with me. That's fine. It doesn't change the fact that I'm right. The point here is you should show up fueled and hydrated. I don't know any elite athletes, I don't know any successful athletes that show up to a starting line of a hard effort, not hydrated or not fueled properly. Just something to think about, all right? So what you want to do is make sure that you are hydrated and fueled before you start the run. Now, here's the thing for long runs. I would say you can get away with, like a 90-minute long run and not fueling or hydrating on the run. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. I'm just saying you can do it. 90 minutes is not that long in the grand scheme of things. It's a long time to run, but it's not that long of a time if you're properly fueled, if you're properly hydrated to go for a run and not eat anything or drink anything. But here's the thing. Why are you going on these long runs? Are you doing it to set yourself up to do longer runs and potentially a longer race, like a race that could be 2.5 hours, 3.5 hours, 4.5 hours, 5.5 hours long? Then what you want to do is look at your long runs as practice for those other runs, those longer runs and that race that is going to take a long time. So what you want to do is take advantage of your long runs, even if you don't need physiologically to eat and drink on a run, to take advantage of the practice of those runs and practice eating and drinking on the run. My point here is if you're practicing to eventually do a marathon or a half marathon, it's going to take 2 hours or longer, then use your long runs to eat and drink. Practice eating and drinking. It's not normal to eat and drink on a run. It's not. But you can normalize it if you practice it. So yes, maybe you don't need to eat and drink on a 60-minute long run, but that 60-minute long run is practice for longer runs and the race. So practice eating and drinking on those long runs. If you're planning on taking fluids and taking fuel 5K into a 42.2K race, well then practice taking fuel and fluids into your body on a 60-minute long run, a 90-minute long run, a 20K long run. Take advantage of those things. So be fueled and be hydrated before the run, and then take advantage of those runs to practice fueling on the run. And don't wait until you get to a point where you need to fuel and hydrate. Practice fueling and hydrated before you need to. Remember, you're not taking fuel at 5K for 6K. You're taking fuel at 5K for 10K. That's what you need to be thinking about. So those runs that may end at 60 minutes, you're practicing taking fluids and fuel in at 25 minutes and 45 minutes during that run. Don't waste practice time. From a coaching perspective, that's that's up there in our pet peeves. Don't waste time. Don't do it, okay? All right, so another one. That was tip 2. Let's move to tip 3. I call this preparing for the desert. Okay, I used to tell athletes when I was coaching them, there's a point in every season, and really it's usually in preseason especially, but it happens throughout the year, where they go into the desert, where inspiration is low, where motivation starts to wane, they start to lose focus, they start to question why they're doing this. Prepare for it. Like imagine you have a map and you realize, okay, we're starting here, and on the other side of the map, we're trying to get there, which is, let's say, race day. And somewhere on this map, there's a desert. I'm going to go through it.
where I'm not super excited to go for an easy run, or I'm not super excited to do another speed run. Well, it's the same thing in a long run. There are points in some long runs where the challenge isn't even, the endurance aspect of the run. It's the mental or mindful aspect. It's going through that period where you're like, why am I doing this? So you almost have like this microcosm in a long run of what you're doing in the big picture, which may be 14, 16 weeks leading up to a half marathon or a marathon or a 15K, whatever it may be, where you're going to have days or potentially weeks where you're wondering, what am I doing? And you're low on focus, and you're low on inspiration, you're low on all of those things that drive you to the starting line. Well, when you do a long run, a lot of times, that's what happens. You go through periods. Maybe you're doing a 2-hour long run, and between 60 minutes and 90 minutes, you struggle. You start wondering, like, why am I doing this? Or you can tell the pace is faltering, not because you're tired physically, you're just worn out mentally, or you're bored. There's so many different aspects of what can happen on a long run that can push you into the desert, so to speak. But be prepared, and it's going to show up in a lot of different ways. And that is one of the purposes of doing a long run, is to challenge yourself in this way. Where mentally, mindfully, emotionally, spiritually, you name it, you're going to be challenged. Be open to that. So when it shows up, it's not proof of you doing something wrong. It's actually proof of you doing the long run the right way, getting to that point in the long run where it's like, okay, this now is what I need to work on. I need to focus on staying focused, or I need to come up with motivation because that voice in my head is telling me I have no motivation, or I need to breathe in some inspiration from my surroundings or from deep inside of me because right now I'm feeling wildly uninspired. That sometimes is the biggest challenge of a long run. It's not powering yourself to cover X distance or X minutes. Sometimes it's the emotional side. It's the spiritual side. It's the mindful side. It's the mental side. That all takes endurance as well. So when you're going on a long run, you're building endurance for all of these things. It's not just, hey, can I physically power myself to cover a certain distance? No, it's, can I handle it in so many different ways? And when I struggle, when I doubt, when I come up to some of these barriers or hurdles, can I handle it? Can I break through the barrier or get around the barrier? Can I clear the hurdle? Can I do these things? Be open and ready for that time in the desert on every single run. So that's another tip that I've got for you. All right, another one. Be open to using a parachute. And what I mean by that is be open to adjusting. Be open to saving yourself on a long run. Anytime you're doing a really difficult effort, you have to understand that you have to be hyper aware and at the same time dismissive. You have to be really sensitive and then sometimes numb to certain things. And what I mean by that, a long run is going to be difficult. So there's going to be an element where you're like, this is a struggle. Now, on an easy run, if you're struggling a lot, I would say, okay, we need to back off. We really need to back off because you shouldn't be struggling this much on an easy run. On a long run, part of the purpose of a long run is to set you up to struggle in certain ways. So you have to pack a parachute and you have to be open to using the parachute. But at the same time, you have to realize maybe this is the purpose. It's to not jump out of the plane yet. It's to ride this out because this is the purpose. But this takes honesty. It takes consistent conversations with yourself on runs to know the difference between, is this the struggle that I'm supposed to go through, or is this beyond that and now I'm actually setting myself back? Because remember, every run you do should end with you a better version of yourself. It should end with you better as a runner. That doesn't mean you're not going to need to recover. It doesn't mean that you're not going to need to, back off your running over the next couple of days. Sometimes that's the purpose of the run. But if we achieve the purpose, we are better as a result of it. You got to be extra careful the harder the effort. that you're not misinterpreting how difficult it really is. Because sometimes we get into a situation where it's easier for us to back off in easier situations, and it's harder for us to back off in harder situations. That's just the way it is. It's nice to have an extra set of eyes there as a teammate or a friend or a coach that's with you to say, hey, guess what? This isn't the purpose of the run. We're not supposed to be running ourselves into the ground. Pull the parachute. Let's get out. I know we were supposed to run 18 miles or 30K, but guess what? We got in 25K. We're good. We're done. Let's get out. Because if we do an extra 5K, if we do the extra 3 miles to get to 18 miles or 30K, we're not going to achieve the purpose of this run. In fact, we're going to set ourselves back, and we're going to have to adjust days and potentially weeks as a result of this. You have to always have that parachute packed. It doesn't mean you're going to use it. But no, it's there to use in times where, guess what? If you don't use it, it's game, set, match, baby. You know what I mean? So pack the parachute. It's there. Like I said, you don't have to use it. But remember, there's this thing, the law of diminishing returns, which, obviously there's benefits to something. And if you continue to go, sometimes, the benefits get less and less and less. You can imagine, I'm supposed to run 8 miles today or, 15K. And so you do that. And you're like, I feel good, so I'm going to go a little bit longer. And you're going to still get benefits. But the longer you go, maybe the benefits become less and less because you're going longer and longer and longer. You're putting yourselves into a deeper and deeper hole physically. You're going to have to recover more and more and more. But what happens is those law of diminishing returns assume that the returns get less and less and less, but there's a return. Well, not in running. Eventually, those returns become negatives and they become steps back. So what you don't want to do is have a run take you backwards. Regress instead of progress. So just be aware of that, and I think you're going to be okay. So that's another tip. Okay. The last one, I think this is number 5, right? Yeah, because we started out with know what you're doing and where you're going. Okay. Be fueled and hydrated before the run, and then we talked about how we can take advantage of the run and fuel and hydrate on the run. We talked about preparing for the desert. Okay. We talked about being open to using a parachute, packing the parachute and then being open to using it. And now, recover immediately. If you really want to take advantage of your long runs, you want to recover immediately, which means you have to prep for post-run, which means you can't finish it and then go hours without eating or drinking. You can't say, oh, we were in the middle of nowhere and I didn't have anything to eat. No, you knew you were doing a long run. You knew that. There isn't an excuse to not be prepared for afterwards. And when you have intense efforts, okay, the effort does not end until you have recovered from it. So there's kind of like this trail, this tail, trail. You can decide which one. I don't know which one works. This tail, yeah, there's a tail to a hard effort that extends beyond the end of the running, and it goes into the recovery aspect. It goes into the fueling. It goes into the hydration. It goes into the dealing with stress. It goes into making sure that you're getting the sleep that you need and require so you can take advantage of the work you did. You see, this is the thing. You can train as hard as you want. It's the recovery that soaks it up. So you get no benefit if you're not recovering the right way. All right? So make sure you are setting yourself up to recover immediately from the effort that you're giving. So post long run, make sure you've got with you what you need to recover. And that means fueling and hydration immediately. It means getting out of stressful situations, which doesn't just mean toxic people. It also means don't hang out in the sun, for instance, if you're going to be doing that. Or if you can schedule your long runs, and this would be a privilege, but if you can schedule your long runs where you're not on your feet for some reason afterwards, that's going to accentuate the advantages you're gaining from doing the long run. I mean, that's just obvious. So if you have to work, well, maybe set up your long runs on days that maybe aren't typical days to do a long run. That's fine. You make the schedule work for you. Because it's not just doing the long run, it's also taking advantage of the long run. And taking advantage of the long run has everything to do with the recovery, not the running. All right? So there's your last tip. Recover immediately. And if you can do these 5 things, you're going to have better long runs. And if you have better long runs, well, you're just going to get better. I mean, that's just how it works. So this is pretty cool. It's just 5 things. I mean, there's more things we can do. And if you want to hear more things we can do, then just let me know. But I'll tell you what, these are 5 things to start with. Start with these 5 things. You're going to have better long runs, period. All right? And I'll also just tell you, thanks. Yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to episode 94. And yes, there's a little where I just wish I got to talk about 1994. Don't worry, next episode we're going to hit it, and we're going to hit it hard because it was a great year. But thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing the podcast with friends, family, teammates. I appreciate it. Let me know how your next long run goes and whether or not you took advantage of all 5 or some of these tips that I gave you. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and I will meet you on that next starting line. Thank you so much for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast today. And if you haven't already subscribed or set yourself as a follower to the podcast, I really hope you would. And make sure you check out the show notes, because in those show notes, you're going to find a link to Coach Bennett's newsletter and all the social media sites I'm on, like Instagram and Threads and Cameo and Blue Sky and nope, not on that one anymore. So all the ones I am on, you're going to find it in the show notes, so check that out as well. And as always, thank you again for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast. Until next time, you keep taking care of yourself and each other.